And 1. So welcome back to the pod of many things, everyone. Whoever you are, whenever you are, wherever you are, we're back. And today we're talking about some mechanical madness. We're talking about Mecha Hack with the designer Matt Click. And we're back to the normal podcast format now after our Tasha's coverage that seemed to go on forever, but is alive and well and it's done. And if you want to check that out, we've chopped it up into different little bite-sized chunks for you on our channel. You might not hear a lot from Leon this episode because he's having some internet issues, but he's still here. He's taking a more producer standpoint, and he's going to be like shooting me messages, giving me ideas and stuff in the chat. So hopefully he won't drop out too much. But we're talking about creators and their products again this week. We're talking to Matt Click. So hey Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be here.
Thank you very much. I know that time difference and everything, you're on a tight schedule, so we really appreciate you coming here. So for those people who don't know, Matt Click is from Absolute Tabletop and is the creator of Mecha Hack, which has recently had its first, should we say like expansion or secondary source book?
Yeah, it's sort of like a supplement or a splat book, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. Supplement crowdfunded on Kickstarter. So we now have Mecha Hack and Mecha Hack the Mission Manual. It was kickstarted in 24 hours, wasn't it, Matt?
Yeah. We hit our goal in 24 hours, and we actually hit our last stretch goal last week, and we're still going strong. So
yeah, if you are interested, please check it out. It's a lovely system. I've just backed it today to get both the physical copies of the Mecha Hack core book and the Mecha Hack Mission Manual. It's just something I need in my life, apparently. But it's lovely to meet you, Matt. And could you tell us a bit about yourself, about your history in tabletop RPGs and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started playing tabletop RPGs when I was around 11 years old. I got started with the old Star Wars D6, the West End Games edition of the game, which remains one of my favorites to this day. And eventually started playing like D&D and Savage Worlds, and just sort of constantly trying out new systems and new games, and building my own stuff and running games for my friends and my family. And in college, starting a game group and stuff. And after college, came out with a degree in English and was kind of struggling, wondering what to do with it. And started freelancing, working in tabletop games. My first freelance job was with Fantasy Flight Games, working on their board games, Descent expansions and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually working with Wizards, Chaosium, Green Ronin, R. Talsorian, and a few others. And now tabletop games it's my full-time job. It's what I do for my work. So in addition to doing editing and writing and development for various publishers, I am also a co-founder of Absolute Tabletop, and that's where I am publishing the Mecha Hack and its follow-up mission manual.
Wow, fucking hell! I didn't realize that your CV was like that packed with like those sorts of people. That's amazing. How was it working for some of those like massive companies like Green Ronin, famous for Mutants and Masterminds and stuff like that? Wizards, obviously.
Yeah, it's great working with these companies, and I've over the years I've developed professional relationships with a lot of the people who sort of manage the freelance end of things. So these are people that I work with on sort of a weekly basis, and working with these big companies on big properties is always really exciting and really fun. And I always kind of have this sort of, I'm like, how did I get here? Are they really trusting me with this? Like I worked on, there was a Witcher book with R. Talsorian that's coming out. That's like an adventure book with a bunch of Witcher adventures in it. And like working on an official, Witcher property was just like, I felt like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like this feels important, but it's always really fun. And it's something that I just sort of like stumbled into. I started doing it kind of for fun, and now it's my job. So I'm definitely fortunate in that regard. So.
That's amazing. What? Just because I'm nosy, I don't know if that's a British thing or anything, but like, what would you say is the biggest thing you've ever worked on as a freelancer? What's like the biggest thing you've ever worked on?
So probably I worked on Dungeon of the Mad Mage with Wizards of the Coast. I was one of the editors on that massive book. So there were a team of about 3 or 4 editors working on that book. Each of us took on about 20 of the levels in the dungeon. So I worked on a bunch of that, which was really cool. I worked on the 3rd edition of Arkham Horror with Fantasy Flight. That was really cool.
Wow.
Because that was like one of the first board games that I played that wasn't like Monopoly. You know what I mean? Like it was the first board game I played where I was like, oh wow, board games can be cool. Like this is cooperative and fun and dark and there's monsters and stuff. So working on the 3rd edition of the game was really, really cool. And let's see, what else? Honestly, working on the Witcher book was really cool. I worked on what Cubicle 7 was gonna come out with a 2nd edition of their One Ring RPG. I actually worked on that. I did some writing for that, but then they lost the license before they published it, and that was a huge bummer. But
people were saying
really
that was
cool.
Massive. Like that was a massive like wasted opportunity. Like,
oh my god,
RPG, the 1st edition of that was apparently really good, and then the 2nd edition, people were like really hyped for it, and then the license went, and everyone's like, no, because they knew it was in development. So that must have been a kicker.
Oh, it was awful because it's like people had already pre-ordered the book, so the company had to refund all of this money and stuff to people, and I just remember being so bummed. Like I got the email from my contact over there, and he was like, "Hey, I'm just letting you know, like we lost the license, and so your stuff isn't going to be published." And it was just like, oh no, like it was such a blow. But I guess is it Modifius that picked it up? I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'll look into it.
Yeah, I think someone else picked it up and they're going to be publishing it. I have no idea if they're using the stuff that was already written or if they're starting from the ground up, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Definitely, especially with like, sorry, pardon me. What you guys would have put into it. You've also won an ENnie, which is massive. So, would you mind explaining to people what an ENnie is and like what you won that for? It's a real accomplishment. I think I kind of wanted to signal boost that because I think people should take pride in what they've done.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you. So the Ennies are, they're these annual awards put on by EN World, which is a pretty well-known tabletop site. And they usually host it at Gen Con every year. Obviously, that didn't happen this year, so they did a virtual stream. But Ennies are basically, you submit products for Ennies. So if you are a publisher, if you're a designer, you can submit a product for consideration in the Ennies, and your product goes out to this panel of judges. The judges sort through all of the entries and nominate products for certain categories. So there's like best adventure, best art, best maps, things like that. And then everyone votes on it. So it's an open voting sort of thing where anyone can log on and vote on the various categories. So I worked on a book called Ironsworn Delve, which is
Ironsworn, that's big.
Yeah, it's a supplement for the Ironsworn game, which is a really amazing Powered by the Apocalypse game. And Ironsworn Delve I worked on as a writer and an editor, and it won a Silver ENnie this year for best product. So that was really cool to actually. I've been nominated a few times for various products that I've worked on, but to actually win one was really, really cool, really good feeling. And I got the medal and the mail and stuff, so it felt very, very official.
That's amazing. That must be like for someone who's gone from freelancing to still kind of freelancing, but having something like cemented in the Ennies is pretty cool. That's amazing. Yeah. We've talked about with other people, like we've had somebody from Versus Studios. We talked about their company as well before we started talking about the product, so that people could get to know their company and stuff like that. And I wondered, like you mentioned Absolute Tabletop, you're one of the founders of it. How did that come about? Because on your website it says that you just went from a bunch of friends playing D&D to this indie publisher with now a successful Kickstarter, a successful products, like a range of products as well. If you look at your website, how did that come about? How have you managed to grow from this just group of mates playing D&D to now being an international company now?
Right. Yeah. So we started. Well, it was funny. It was right around when 5th edition came out, and I was running a YouTube channel at the time, and was trying to get some people together for a game to try out the new edition of D&D and host it on my YouTube channel. And so I kind of reached out to some other creators in this little community that I was a part of, who I thought would be good players and who I kind of felt like I jived with sort of on a emotional level. When I watched their videos, I was like, these guys seem cool. I reached out to them and got this game together, and it was intended to be a one-shot game, just sort of a one-off. But my internet cut out right before the game ended, and so we didn't get to finish it. And so I was like, okay, well, we have to play again. And that turned into a campaign called The Provokers, which is pretty popular D&D live play. At the time, there wasn't a ton out there, so it was popular at the time. Obviously, there's a ton of other streams out there that are wildly popular now. It just pales in comparison. But at the time, it was pretty cool. We would have people show up and watch us and stuff, and we just really found ourselves really enjoying not just playing with one another, but also just chatting and hanging out and playing different games together and stuff. And eventually we decided to meet up in person. And so we all kind of pooled some money together and we had everyone fly out to Washington and hang out at my house for a few days. And we just had such a good time. And it was after that trip that we kind of were like, well, what if we did something kind of official? Like, what if we worked on something together? And we kind of started noodling on some different ideas and some different projects that we wanted to do. And I had tried so many times previously to like write adventures or, design a game. And it's just doing it on your own is so difficult.
I can imagine that actually.
Yeah. It's such a weight to carry by yourself, and you have, no one helping you out, no one to bounce ideas off of. It makes it really, really difficult. So we started working on some stuff together, and we decided to kind of do it for real. And so we founded an LLC, Absolute Tabletop, and started publishing products. And we started out just doing these little sort of adventures. You pay what you want, supplements for D&D. And then eventually we started doing Kickstarters. And our first Kickstarter was a book called Oath of the Frozen King, which is it's an adventure kit. And adventure kits are kind of like they're adventure modules with all the like various pieces kind of broken out into these modular pieces. So you can kind of fit them together however you want. So you can take this encounter and put it in this location and include this monster, and really kind of craft your own adventure. And that did really well on Kickstarter and garnered us a lot of attention. And that's what we got our first Emmy nomination was for that book. And then since then, we've just kind of been continually every year doing a couple of Kickstarters, putting out products, and just really enjoying working together. We have a really awesome working relationship, and I think we do some pretty cool stuff. So, and in the last couple of years, we've really managed to, we've been able to bring on other people. We've been able to hire freelancers of our own, and that's a really cool feeling because that's how I got my start was, just working for companies, doing writing, doing editing. And so it's cool to be able to people to get them work, get them paid work, and get credits, in their portfolio for various books. So,
oh no, that's amazing because it's almost like you're like coming full circle, like you're giving somebody the opportunities that you were given.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And that feels really cool. So that sounds insane because your products look really good. Like they look really well designed. From what I've looked at. Especially with my kind of small obsession with Mecca hack and reading over it. Like you've got some great art in there. You've got some great art in there by someone who I don't really know really well, but one of our friends, Ben, who has a YouTube called The Flickering Torch. He says that he also did the art for
ICRPG. Or
yes, yeah, he's actually the designer of ICRPG.
Yeah, the designer,
yeah.
Yeah, so he's like Ben's favorite person. He was going on about it. So he was saying like, for this to happen, like it obviously shows your quality because you've been able to get somebody of this caliber. So I think for you to be able to like do that, I think is amazing. So yeah,
it's a really good feeling.
What about like, so not everybody could do this because like I think what you say is really good. Like you had to like get each other, be in each other's company, get all together, like establish a really good working relationship, and you're still friends, I'm guessing, even though you're members of, I don't know how your company runs, if you're all members of the board and equal investors or yada yada, but like how do you stop that work relationship getting in the way of like your friendship? Like, because I can imagine that you get frustrated with each other, especially when you've got a cool idea or somebody else has got a cool idea and then everybody else is just like, no, we can't do that right now, or something else.
But should I be offended by this, Adderson?
No. I'm just saying like I can imagine that, like, because we do this and there's no like stakes, there's no like money involved. We do this out of the love of it. But I can imagine if me and you were doing this, Leon, and the money was involved and we'd invested money and our livelihoods depended on it, I could imagine that we would get a bit like. So how do you stop that from happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and honestly, the answer is that you can't really stop it from happening because there are going to be conflicts that arise, and we're very open about the fact that we do have arguments. We do every few months we have something that comes up where we get really mad at each other, and we have some sort of argument, and one of us goes off and has to leave the chat or whatever, to kind of cool off. And I think that, that can be healthy, because every conflict that we've ever had has led to something good within the company, some sort of change that needs to happen. And, I liken it almost to a romantic relationship where it's like, if you're not arguing with your partner from time to time, that's kind of not good, because it means that there's, that you're not invested enough to be passionate about the relationship. And it's the same thing with a working relationship, where if you're heated, if you're passionate, if you feel strongly about something, that's good. But the key is to argue efficiently and productively. And so we've really found a way to be able to have those kinds of conflicts. And we do argue sometimes about money, or how money is spent, or where money should be going, or how much we should be paying ourselves. And all of that just comes down to having a conversation. And we've learned to, if we're talking in our WhatsApp or whatever, and we're just typing back and forth, we'll say, okay, this needs to be a conversation. So we need to stop talking in text and get into a Zoom and actually talk, face to face, so to speak. So we just learned over the years how to do that and how to handle it productively. And I think, we're all adults, and we all have siblings and family members and significant others that we have experience with having conflict with. So it just sort of works out that we all are reasonable people, even if we're arguing and having conflict. So
yeah. So Leon, I think next time we have an argument, what I'm hearing here is we need to min-max our arguing. When we're going hammer and tongs at each other, we need to make sure that we've got like max stats in the right places and stuff like that.
Yep, exactly.
No. That's quite concerning because you're taller than me.
But in terms of like art and stuff, like the art's really great on a lot of your. Do you have like in-house artists, or do you have like freelance?
Yeah, so we contract out all of our art. We have sort of like a stable of artists that we work with on a very regular basis. And we've kind of developed those relationships again over the years as we've worked with them. And that has been really cool too, because I'm somebody who, I'm not an artistic person. I like doodling every now and then, but I can never get the things that are in my head onto the paper, and it's sort of like a physical rendition of them. And
can't relate, bro. Not at all. I mean, that doesn't happen to me at all. It doesn't hurt. It hurts. I know your pain, man.
Yeah. That is, honestly, that's probably the coolest thing. And it never gets old, is you commission these pieces of art, and you get the art back from the artist, and it's somehow not what you expected, but better. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
oh yeah, it's everything you wanted, but it's everything you also didn't know you wanted at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, because you realize that my brain doesn't work like that. Like when we work with Hank, our artist for Mecha Hack, when he creates these mecha designs, I would have never thought of that. I would have never thought to shape a mecha that way, or give it that weapon, or make it, make the limbs look that way. And so that I really like delegating stuff like that, and just being like, here's a phrase that I wrote, big chunky mecha with a great sword. Can you make that cool? Like, can you do a cool thing for that? And just having them make the thing that you can't, and then have it and put it in the book is it's such a cool thing. It's a really rewarding process. And so that's probably my favorite part, is like the working with the artists and getting the art back. And I do layout for our books as well. So I have a very like intimate relationship with the art of like where it goes on the page and how it fits and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really cool process.
Yeah, and
can I just comment on the aesthetic for this book for a second, because this is one of the prettiest books I've ever seen.
Oh,
and
thank you.
It only uses 3 colors, black, white, and gray. Yet the artwork just feels so alive, and you can tell exactly what everything is. It feels very 3D, not 2-dimensional. It's just such a fantastic aesthetic.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that was, a very conscious design decision when we were making the core book. We really wanted the art to evoke the mechanics of the book. We wanted, people to see the book and go, this looks like a really simple, hackable system. Like, the art itself is very rough and stark black and white and simple, but...
Technical difficulties there. Taking you back in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, all right, carry on.
But yeah, no, it's just obvious. The art is so stark and so obvious that it tells you everything you need to know without even reading. And I think that's a really good way to put it. So now that we're actually on Mecha Hack, Matt, you've kind of taken Kickstarter by storm with this mission manual. You've managed to get all your stretch goals accomplished to add to the mission manual. You've got people like pledging you a lot of money to deliver this book to them. Mm-hmm. And it must feel great. How are you feeling about that? The fact that you've already published this once, and then you're like, actually, we'll reprint it and do this supplement, and that people are still that invested in this product that they're willing to reinvest almost.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful feeling, and honestly, I have such a hard time like talking myself up, or taking a compliment. I'm very like self-deprecating in that way, but it's like it is very, I don't know, I just feel really proud of this little game, and it is very heartening that I sort of made this game for myself. I wanted a mecha game that I could pull out and run in a couple of minutes. I wanted to be able to run Gundam games for my friends, or a BattleTech game for my friends, without having to pull out a 300-page book and flip through and figure out what the hell we were going to do. And so creating a system where you can build your mecha and be rolling dice and playing within 5 minutes was just something that I needed. And when I made it and I played it, and I said, this is actually pretty fun, this is pretty good, and I gave it to the other guys at Absolute Tabletop and said, I think this might be good. Do we want to like put money towards this and get some art and actually get it made? And then we put it out. It was kind of a gamble. It was the first like non D&D thing that we had done, or the first like non like traditional sort of fantasy. And so it was kind of a risk for us, and we didn't kickstart that initial book. We put our own money into it. And so the fact that it did so well and eventually became a platinum seller on DriveThruRPG and stuff was just bewildering. It was so cool. And it was so cool to see that people were not only running it and playing it, but also like taking it and making it their own. Like, people were running Warhammer with it, and Voltron, and Starfighter games, reskinning the mecha as Starfighters and running Starfighter games. And like, that felt really cool that people liked the system enough to take it and do something really cool with it. And so the Kickstarter, again, it felt like a little bit of a risk because, okay, it's a mecha game. It's a rules light mecha game. I don't know how in demand this is. It's also in the middle of a pandemic leading up to the holidays. Like, I don't know how this is going to do. So the fact that we not only hit our funding goal, but soared past it and are now coming up on potentially 30K is, it's wild. I haven't quite come to terms with it yet. And I think that in a couple of weeks, it'll really hit me. But right now it just feels really, really cool.
So a couple of things. Don't worry, we'll big you up and I definitely will, because of the fact that, dude, I genuinely did not know that I needed this in my life. Like you got me rewatching things like because of this, and we'll talk about that later when we go into like the Mecca stuff, because it's the only time I'm ever going to be able to talk about this with anyone, apparently. But actually, speaking of the system, the fact that it's rules light, you chose the Black Hack system for this, which people know is like a very rules light system that's kind of just out there, open source almost, that people take and make games with. And even though it's simple and intuitive, it's still really rich and like cool. Why did you choose the Black Hack system for this RPG? Was it for that reason, that it was so simple, or was there something else? Or
it was really sort of kismet that I was running a lot of Black Hack at the time when I started designing the Mecha Hack. And I really fell in love with that system. The Black Hack it's fantastic. It's lightweight, but there's enough there where you can feel like you're able to do cool stuff, and all the different monsters and the different sort of subsystems. The usage die mechanic is one of my favorite mechanics of all time in any RPG. It is so fun. And so smart. And I was working with David Black on a project that never came to fruition, but we were kind of tinkering with something, working on it together. And at the time I was like, hey, has anyone ever done a mecha hack, like based on the Black Hack? Because there's a Cthulhu hack, there's a space hack, there's a apocalypse hack. Like, there's just a ton of different variations on the Black Hack out there, and a lot of them are very good. But I asked him if anyone had ever done like a mecha or like a super robot version of the Black Hack, and he was like, I don't think so. And I was like, okay, dibs, I want to do that. Like, I would like to create the Mecha Hack. And
Shotgun
so I created, yeah, exactly. Shotgun. And he sort of gave me his blessing and said, yeah, go for it. Like, I don't have an issue with that. And so the fact that I had this sort of framework, this really strong framework to work with, was like, I basically felt like I stripped away everything except for the bare bones of the system, and then started building on top of it. And it was the most fun I've ever had designing a game, because the systems that are in place are so easy to work with, where it's like
Roll Under is a great system as well.
Yeah, Roll Under, binary success. There's very few player-facing rolls. Like the GM doesn't roll for the enemies. The players roll to avoid damage. It's slick. It's quick. Like, it's really easy to run, easy to prep for. But there's so much there to have fun with, and having the usage die work for the reactors was
the reactor die is so cool.
That was when I was writing the game and I was like, oh, the reactor should be a usage die. That was when I realized, okay, this could be good. Like, I was like, it's so easy to say, okay, you can do this amazing, cool thing, but you have to roll your reactor die. It's like such an easy, like, I don't have to worry about how many times can you do this per encounter? How much energy does this use? What do you need to do to replenish this ability?
What resource is it? Yeah,
like you don't have to worry about any of that, because it's all tied to the reactor die. And so it just makes it so easy to design stuff for it. And it's a lot of fun when I can sit down and like watch a mecha show and just see something cool and go, oh, I want to put that in Mecha Hack, and just like write, what would that do in the Mecha Hack? How would that work in the system? So the Black Hack is fantastic. I can't recommend it enough, and it worked perfectly for this mecha game.
I was going to ask you, actually, and I feel like you kind of answered it, but if you want to answer it in a bit more detail, I was going to say, why mechas? What made you go, you know what we need? TTRPG Gundams, because obviously we've got sword and sorcery, D&D hype, we've got Cyberpunk 2077. No matter what you think about that game, like the RPG is majorly like popular and stuff like that. So what made you go, you know what, I feel like I get it, like you're a fan of mechas and stuff like that, but was there any other reason why you just kind of went, mechas, that's what we need?
Yeah, I honestly at the time it was sort of like I felt like there wasn't really anything. Like this was pre-Lancer. Lancer was being developed, but it wasn't out yet. There was a new edition of BattleTech out, but I mean BattleTech is love BattleTech. But it is it's complicated. It's a spreadsheets, the RPG sort of deal, but there was this niche that there was nothing there. There was no rules light mecha game, and I was like, this seems weird that there isn't a game that fills this slot. And it's pretty rare in game design or any sort of creative work that you kind of stumble upon like, oh, hold up, there's a hole here. I could fill this with something. Like this type of game doesn't exist, and I could make it. And so it just naturally, like me being a lifelong fan of mecha and wanting to run and play in mecha games, but not having a system to be able to do it, it was just sort of this thing where it was like, I need to make this. And our little like saying at Absolute Tabletop is we make what we use. Like we never make a product that we wouldn't use. It's always stuff that, you know, tools that we would use at our own game tables. And that's really the Mecha hack. Is I created it for myself, and it just so happened that a lot of other people, I mean, like you're saying, Adderson, like I didn't know I needed this. I feel like that was everyone's reaction to this game is I didn't know I needed this, but here it is, and I love it. So
yeah, I feel like me and Leon have the same work ethic. I admire that. Like we only talk about things that we find interesting. We only do things that we find that we would enjoy. So I do admire that, because there are. I can imagine that as a business, there is the thing to like jump on trends, like because then you can make money, and like that's just a thing. And so I respect that, and I admire that work ethic from Absolute Tabletop. The fact that you're like, you know what, if we wouldn't use it, nah, like we're not like, we try not to anticipate what's going to do well, and instead just create stuff that we think is cool. And that's kind of difficult as a business sometimes, because you do sort of have to anticipate what people want, because you want the product to be successful, especially if you're putting money into it. But I feel like there's a balance that can be achieved where it's like, I want to create something cool that I want to use, but I also want to make it useful for the widest number of people. Yeah. So I was going to ask you for like the elevator pitch, but we've kind of like done that as well. So instead, what I'd like to like pivot to instead is, I'm playing Lancer on Saturday with a couple of friends of mine, and if say somebody was offered Lancer, BattleTech, Mecha hack, what would you say sets Mecha hack apart, and why should they pick the Mecha hack up instead of those other two games? And I know you probably love those other two games, like Lancer has an amazing online interface. Is it called CompCon? Yeah. And BattleTech obviously is your classic like mecha tabletop RPG. But why should people go for Mecha hack instead of those other two?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So for me, like I said, I love Lancer. Lancer is great. It's a fantastic system. The art is some of my favorite in any RPG. It has some really cool mechanics.
It does look good. It looks
good.
Man,
it looks so good. Yeah. But the thing with Lancer and the thing with BattleTech and honestly a lot of mecha TTRPGs out there is that it requires a significant amount of buy-in from the group. You have to be able to convince your group that it's going to be worth it to sit here for an hour and a half and make characters. I promise you. And it's going to be worth it to have this book that's 400 pages. And for certain groups, that is perfect. That's great. Because if you get a group together that wants to play Lancer, like you found the Holy Grail. Congratulations. Like you did it. But for a group that is maybe not as gung-ho to jump into something like Lancer, Mecha hack is, I mean, you can hand someone Mecha hack
like
and
50
say,
pages. Like,
and 10 of it is the rules. You know what I mean? Like it's so simple to both learn and teach, where you just go, okay, pick a pilot, pick a chassis, pick a module, let's go. Like, it takes literally 5 minutes to make a character, and then you're rolling within minutes, and you can say, okay, you're just trying to roll under your ability. So if you roll under, you succeed. Boom. Like, no DCs, no weird modifiers. If you roll under, you succeed at the thing you're trying to do. And I think it's one of those things where people get Mecha Hack a lot faster than they get something like Lancer. And so what I've heard from people with Mecha Hack is that it's amazing for one-shot games. It's amazing for con games. And it's good for people who want to play a giant stompy robots game, but aren't necessarily into like the minutia of a sort of granular like mecha TTRPG. Yeah,
that makes sense, because I want to run it for our friends over at the Flickering Torch. Like, I appear on their stream. We're currently playing Blades in the Dark, and we've said we'd take turns running a game that isn't 5e, basically. I want to run Mecha Hack for like a 4-shot using the Lodestone alpha setting. I was going to ask for your blessing about this, but as you've just mentioned, like, how simple it is, like, I thought like is that something you'd like be really like behind, like people showcasing your work in that way? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love to see it. I love to see people running my games. I love to see people breaking my games, like just ripping the game apart and making it their own. It's one of my favorite things, because if I can inspire someone to not only run the game but homebrew it, do game design of their own, like that's the coolest thing. So
that is that. Yeah. So I will come to you for ideas and maybe some assets maybe that we can use on our stream, and then
absolutely.
Hopefully. I also wanted to ask. We kind of talked about the art and how it's so sleek and stylish, and your input in the artists, and more the fact that you just give them an idea and you put it on the page. So I can kind of leave that question out, because we went into that, because it is like, we've got a copy on digital, and usually I don't like the digital PDFs of books, because I'm just a bit like, I feel like I'm missing out on something, like the turning of the page and like the vibrancy of the art. And then as soon as I opened this, I was like, even like the front bit with like the punk rock like devil horns, I was like, oh no, this is sick, let's go. Like, awesome. But okay, so what is your favorite thing about Mecha Hack? Like, your personal favorite thing, either as the designer or as a player? What do you love about this? What makes you want to play it?
Yeah, I think that for me, the thing that I really love about it is the feeling of teamwork that comes naturally from playing this game. And this is completely by accident. I didn't really do this on purpose, but a lot of the different abilities and modules will affect other mecha on the team. And I don't know if it's just the theme of being in giant robots and working together or what, but every game I've run, every game I've played in, every game I've watched, there's like this natural camaraderie that develops between the players, where they're trying to set each other up for these awesome, like, climactic sort of things, like, oh, I'm gonna boost up your reactor so on your next turn you can do this, or I'm gonna use this help action and give you an extra action, or you know what, like, there's this really cool sort of non-competitive cooperative thing that happens in this game, and I wish that I could take credit for it, because it's wonderful, but I think that it's just it's a byproduct of how a lot of the abilities work, combined with just the theme of the game, where it's like you're a fire team. Like, none of these mecha are jack of all trades. You're all good at something, and you have to help each other out. And that is really, really cool. I love that feeling of like having each mecha on the fire team be good at something different and being able to like fill a role and help out their comrades.
Yeah, definitely. Like, that often comes with like games where you play like soldiers and stuff like that. You
totally
form camaraderie. I also all I could think of when you said about them coming together as well is like fucking Megazords, man.
Yeah.
Voltron, form Voltron.
Yeah.
Because you do naturally with like mecha stuff, don't you? You kind of think
totally
like teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's awesome. let me just have a look at my questions here. This might be a good one. So, so you talked about your favorite thing, and I don't want to phrase this as like your least favorite thing. So let's call it the most challenging thing. What do you think is either the most challenging thing about Mecha Hack in terms of playing it or designing it? You can choose which way that goes. What was the most challenging thing about Mecha Hack?
Yeah, I think probably the most challenging thing about the game is, and this happens whenever you add stuff to a game that already exists, is creating things that bloat the game a little bit or create this sense of like power creep where I'm not worried about balance. I want to get that out there. I don't necessarily worry about balance. I don't want each chassis to be as good as the other chassis necessarily, because they all do different stuff, and I'm not worried about that. But I think just in terms of like, I don't want anyone to be able to like steal the spotlight from anyone else in the game mechanically. And sometimes it's difficult to design stuff, especially when you're designing things for like 100-foot tall rope, like walking tanks with like nuclear weapon launchers on their shoulders and stuff. Like, it's hard to not design stuff that is too powerful. But sometimes I feel like some of the stuff that I design for the game, it kind of pushes things a little bit too much, and people are able to combine things in different ways to deal out too much damage or take up too much of the spotlight during the game. And this has happened in playtesting with stuff from the mission manual. And so that's why for me, playtesting is important, because I go by gut reaction. And if I feel like, oof, that's too much what they just did, then I might, dial it in or dial it back or whatever. But I tend to be a game designer that just kind of jumps in and creates something cool and doesn't necessarily think, what are the implications of this with the stuff that already exists? And so that can be difficult sometimes in designing stuff for this game, is like, if I create a thing that says you get to roll an additional damage die, and then somebody combines that with another thing that says you get to roll an additional damage die, all of a sudden they're rolling triple damage on their turn. And I'm like, I didn't really intend for that to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like you there's unforeseen consequences, and I think that happens with all like tabletop RPG games. There's always that one guy who can like sit there, or girl. Sometimes it's a girl in the group who sees everything and goes, you know what? If I do this, this, and this all in this row, basically I can unzip anything that you've done.
Yep.
It's like,
and
as a DM or a GM, sometimes you're like, oh no, this is great, and then sometimes you're like, oh fuck, like I've spent hours planning this, and then suddenly. Like, so I can understand that.
And it's difficult too, being both game master and game designer, where if that happens, like, part of me is proud because I'm like, oh wow, like they totally gamed the system and like came up with this amazing combination of things.
But it's your system, so there's a critique of your system. Yeah, I get that.
Yep. And part of me wants to just let it lie, because it's Mecca. It's super robots. They're supposed to be godlike at times, but at other times, it's still a game, and I want it to not feel too overblown, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have anything else in the pipeline for Mecha Hack, or any other projects that Absolute Tabletop are working on, or are you happy kind of just to sit on this for a bit, make sure this is finished and completed to a great standard, ship it off? Or are you a company that's like, we've done this now, let's move on to the next thing?
We always have multiple projects that we're juggling, because there are 4 of us as partners at Absolute Tabletop, and usually we're all at least working on something in the background. And for me, this is obviously the priority right now, is mission manual, finishing we got some additional writing that we need to do from the stretch goals, some additional art, laying the book out and getting that all ready, and getting everything turned around for a quick delivery of this book. But then beyond that, there are a few different things that we're working on. One of them, my next project, is going to be Harbinger, which is it's 5e based, but it's a sci-fi fantasy. It's sort of like Star Wars, Dune, Warhammer inspired, sort of like low tech magic in space kind of stuff. I
see.
And
all I'm hearing is Spelljammer. That's all I'm hearing.
Yeah. It is. It's very inspired by Spelljammer.
We can't say that, Leon. That's trademarked.
Yeah.
It piqued my interest already, so I'm certainly going to be looking out for this.
We actually have, if anyone's interested, if you go to absolutetabletop.com, there are beta rules available for free for Harbinger. It's almost 100 pages of stuff, all the classes and a bunch of enemies and rules for ship combat and all that kind of stuff. But that's gonna kind of be our next big project is Harbinger. We're likely going to kickstart that like in the latter half of next year. But before that happens, we're working on another adventure kit. And I mentioned those a little bit previously in our chat here, but this will be our third adventure kit, and it's going to be a big battle. It's called the Battle for Arctur's Vault. And that is going to be likely coming out the first half of 2021. We're going to be doing a Kickstarter for that as well. So, and then we've got various other little projects that we're kind of tinkering with, and those may or may not manifest as time goes on. But man, for now, I'm really happy to have Mission Manual performing as well as it is, and I'm really looking forward to the holidays coming up. I'm going to take a week and not think about game design for a few days, and then then jump back in and finish this book up. So
you should because you should be really proud of what you've done here. I think well,
thank you.
I genuinely wouldn't have reached out to you and stuff if I didn't think this was worth people picking up. So right. I think this is great, and I think you should be very proud of what you've done. I did notice something in the book's credits, and I wanted to ask you about this. So there's someone else with the surname Click in the book's credits. Well, was this book a family affair?
Oh yeah. So yeah, my wife does a lot of proofreading for me, she is
wife, man. That's all they're good for.
Yes.
I'm joking. I love my wife. Please, Jen.
Yeah. She's incredibly supportive of me, and she puts up with a lot of me working late nights and working on weekends and holidays and things. And she's always just been incredibly supportive of my creative efforts. And even when I was working full time in an office job and then coming home and working full time doing game design on top of that, she was there helping me out. And yeah, she does a lot of proofreading and sanity checking for me, and so she's in the credits there.
Awesome. No, that sounds amazing. Like I can imagine. That it's really nice to have someone support you like that. My wife, I'm a teacher, so I kind of had the same thing with my wife. Like I come home and I work, and like even when I'm in the school holidays, like I'm working and stuff like that. And she supports like late nights. So yeah, I totally get that. So I know that we've not got a lot of time, so we will be linking Mecca Hack, Absolute Tabletop in the description below. But before we go, I'm sorry, Leon. I need to get this out of my system. I need to get this out of my system.
Okay, do it.
We need to talk Mecha Anime for just for. I'll try. Like I know we've only got you for say I think it's another 40 minutes, so we'll try and make this about 20, 30 minutes if we can. I promise. But because no one's ever going to be able to talk about this with me, so you're obviously a Mecha fan, a Mecha Anime fan. What was the first Mecha Anime you ever watched?
So the first one was Robotech Macross. That was the first one I saw, and then the one that really changed my life, though, the one that set me on the path, was Gundam Wing.
Fair enough. So mine was the first one I ever saw was actually I think it was Ava, like first time around.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I didn't really understand it. So I was a bit like, oh, just getting the fucking robot.
Yeah.
And then, then, because you've got like the best job in the world, not realizing. And then I think the same one that changed my life, and you're probably going to look down on me a little bit here, is Zoids. Like,
Zoids is great. I love Zoids.
I love Zoids with all my heart. Like, I genuinely like get up early in the morning and be like, yeah, this is great. And then I kind of forgot about it. I kind of put my mecha like obsession to the back of my mind for a long time. And then the Pacific Rim movies came out, and I was like, shit, I remembered how much I love this. What about what do you think is the best mecha anime for people to watch? Like giant robot animes for people to watch if they want to get into it.
Yeah, if you're looking to just like grok the genre, like it's oh man, it's so tough to recommend one because like I don't think people realize, but like within mecha there's like subgenres. Like it's like it goes really deep where it's like, okay, it's not just mecha. There's military mecha. There's like super robot mecha. There's like Power Rangers style mecha. Like there's all, this all this stuff. But if I were to recommend like one series, it would probably be Mobile Suit Gundam 08th MS Team. And the reason why I recommend this to people is because it's nice and short. It's like 12 episodes, so it's really easy. It's not a huge commitment to watch the series. Mm-hmm. But also it has a lot of the tropes of mecha, but it still feels grounded because it's like regular soldiers, right? Like in these Gundam suits. It's not like they're not psychic, they're not cybernetic, they're not superheroes, they're just like people. And it really focuses on the effects of the war and the interpersonal relationships between not only the pilots on the team, but also the enemy pilots that they're facing. And it's just a great series. It has amazing action. There's this 2-part episode later in the series where they have this gigantic battle in a ruined, bombed out city. And it's like, for me, it is the like quintessential mecha combat. Like when I run Mecha Hack and there's a combat happening, like I want it to look like that. Yeah, I want it to be the bombed out buildings and the shooting from behind cover and the like tight alleyways where you can't really escape and stuff like that. Like it's great. So 08th MS Team is the one that I would recommend over pretty much anything else.
I think my recommendation is another Gundam one, admittedly, because Zoids is good, but it's a bit of a commitment.
Yep.
And I think this one's not as much of a commitment, and if you wanted to, you could stop after the first season. Not that you should, but you could if you really wanted to, because it ties up nicely. And I've just watched it recently in preparation for this, pretty much. Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Yeah, it's great.
It's so good. I cried a manly tear. I was like, and it's like, oh, this is so good. So yeah.
Iron-Blooded Orphans is fantastic. I love that series, and it's really great because it's its own story. It's not connected to anything else in the Gundam universe, and so you can watch it knowing literally nothing about Gundam or Mecha and still understand what's going on. Yeah.
And it's not, even though it has like some of those themes that are quite heavy, it's not as heavily shoved down your throat as say like Ava, which everybody goes, yeah, watch Ava first. I'm like, are you on crack?
I don't think Evangelion should be your first mecha show for sure. Yeah,
especially the old one, because then you get that weird scene with Oscar in the hospital, and you're like, what? Like, so yeah, and then everybody's like, well, you can always watch Rebuild. I'm like, Rebuild 3 is like dog turd. Like, it makes no sense. Like, so yeah, I think those are two really good things there. But if you want one that's a bit more like campy and a bit more pulpy, I think Zoids is probably the best one I could imagine.
Zoids is really fun, and it has really cool mecha designs in it too.
Yeah, because like there are bits where it gets really serious, but then there's like that one season that's like it's a sport, and you're like, oh no, that's sick. Like, so yeah, that's probably my recommendation. So, Gundam away first team and Iron-Blooded Orphans if you want to get into mecha. What's your favorite like mecha suit you've ever seen? Like, it could be from anything. Man. It can be from video games, from anime. It could be from a live action film that's been made, like Pacific Rim.
I think I have two. Can I cheat and do two?
Sure.
Okay. So I think the first one, the first mecha design that I really, really fell in love with was Tall Geese from Gundam Wing. Yeah. Because Tall Geese was so big and imposing, and the design of the helmet and the thrusters on the back and the big like bazooka cannon was just so cool looking. I'd like never seen anything like it, and having it be so much bigger than the Gundams was such a smart choice because it made it seem just like out of this world strong, just like crazy strong, where it could go toe to toe with like, the Gundam.
Yeah, it was imposing, wasn't it? It was
genuinely
for when the heroes came up against Tall Geese, like that you, or when you saw Torgeese on the battlefield, that oh shit, we might lose. Like the guys I'm rooting for might lose.
Exactly, yeah, and it helped that Torgeese had a cool pilot with Zex Marquise, which was he's kind of the Char Aznable of Gundam Wing. So he was like a cool pilot, cool mecha, like just really neat design and a really imposing bad guy. It's sort of like the Darth Vader of Gundam, like just like this really distinct signature bad guy look. Really love that. And then I have to give an honorable mention though to Escaflone.
Oh yeah.
Escaflone is it's unique in that it's a fantasy mecha, so it's like dragons and airships and knights rather than space and lasers and stuff. But Escaflone is this really neat looking mecha where it's built out of like dragon bones, and so it has this almost like skeletal appearance, and it can transform into a dragon, which is always neat. But I love the knightly look of Escaflone with like the cloak and stuff, and then when it transforms, the cloak becomes the membrane of the wings. It's just like really neat design, really well thought out design.
Definitely. My favorite, I'll do two as well. My favorite one, and honorable mention. So my honorable mention I'm going to do is for that weird Count of Monte Cristo anime that they did. Kutsuo, that had like that duel scene with the two mecha in. That just just like what that what like when did that become a thing? Like that was sick. Because like that anime was just really stylized anyway. So when those came in, you were like, oh no, this is sick. So that's my honorable mention. And actually the one that my favorite one, and it's always been my favorite one, it's from a video game. I never know how to say it though, so I'm just gonna Google it. I think it's Jehuti from Zone of Enders.
Oh
the orbital frame from Zone of Enders. Jehuti is just I think I got a demo for that with my PS2 back when for Zone of Enders, and I was like, it was in my Metal Gear Solid 2. It came with the Zone of Enders Konami, and I was like, oh no, this is dope. And, like the way it spoke and like the design of it and like the third person thing, that's always stuck with me. And like when I've gone back, I was like, but how does it compare to Zone of Enders though? And then you're like, oh no, that's cool. And then I think the Command Wolf from Zoids was another one that I really loved. Just because it was just a wolf with a fucking massive cannon on its back, like yo, dude.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
No.
I actually just recently played Zone of Enders. I had never played it before. I kind of I don't know how I just like missed Zone of Enders, and so I actually picked it up for. I think it was like they came out with like a dual pack on the 360 that was like both Zone of Enders games. And so I finally played through them, and I super enjoyed them. It was like I anytime I can find like a mecha game that I haven't played, I'm like on it. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to try that. So it was really cool to go back and play Zone of Enders, having never played it and knowing so little about it. But the mecha designs in that game are just killer. They're so good.
Also, I feel as if we need to give a shout out as well. All the mecha fans out there, if you've not watched DreamWorks' Voltron, it's like the first Western property to like do anime mecha like so well. Like and like the teamwork aspect. So
I also recommend in terms of Western mecha, there's a series from Rooster Teeth called Genlock. Genlock is really good. Really kind of a slow burn mecha show where they really focus on like building the mecha and building the team. But it has a really interesting kind of gimmick where the pilots aren't inside the mecha. They're controlling them from like a little station nearby. So it's almost like VR. Like they go into VR and they're controlling the mecha.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting kind of gimmick, but the mecha designs are really cool. Each mecha on the team, like they all start out the same, but then as the series goes on and they develop their like distinct sort of fighting styles, they all get like different upgrades and like end up looking totally different, even though they all start out with the same like design. It's really
loadout. That is cool. So before I bore Leon to death, because this is the only time that this is ever going to happen. Sorry, Leon. Thank you very much, Matt. We do have a section that we always do with all our guests, called the Deck of Many Things, which is what we do before we say goodbye. The Deck of Many Questions.
Yeah, the Deck of Many Questions.
Yeah, the Deck of Many Questions. Would you be happy to participate in that? A lot of the things are going to be geared more towards like 5e and stuff, but if you would like to change it to be Mecha Hack or something else, we'd be very happy for you to do that.
No, let's do it. Let's whatever you guys normally do.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Matt's going to take part in our segment, our penultimate segment, the Deck of Many the Deck of Many Questions. Fucked it up.
I'm not editing that, Adderson. That's staying in.
That's staying in. Yeah. So the Deck of Many Questions is our fan suggested like question segment where we randomly decide using. I think we've got 100 now, or 75 we've got so far. So 75. We roll some dice and we ask our guests and sometimes ourselves, but because we're short for time, we're going to ask Matt today about what's said. We say who submitted it, and if you would like to submit your own questions, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the comments down below, let us know what you want people to answer. It can be spicy, mild, whatever you want, and we will do our best. And if you want to see Matt on again, show him some love, give us some interaction, and hopefully we can get him back on again and continue this fantastic conversation and keep going. So let's have a look at today's question. Leon, would you generate a number for us, please?
I have. What I've done is I've just kept it to the new question, so between 43 and 75, because I think we've pretty much answered all of the old questions.
Yeah.
So I have typed that into Google, who has given us a random number generation of 46.
So, Matt, our question for you on the Deck of Many Questions today is, what is your favourite monster? It's going to be D&D, Pathfinder, whatever. Just tell us where it's from and explain it.
This is so easy. This is like the easiest question you could ask me, because I literally have this monster tattooed on my body. It is a permanent thing. My favorite monster is and has always been the owlbear.
Fair enough.
I love the owlbear. I love the look of it. I love the design of it. It's such a weird, like, it's just so indicative of the style of D&D and like early D&D, where they were like designing monsters by just like buying toys at the dollar store and being like, what is this? What's this one? Let's make a rust monster. Let's make an owlbear. And so I've always loved owlbears. And so I actually, on my right forearm, I have a big owlbear tattoo. So that was the easiest question you could have asked me.
That's sick. Like, I also love the fact that the owlbear is a threat. Like, I'll owlbear my party. Like, people say that.
On paper, you would expect it to be this cute little this like koala-sized bear that has some owl features, but no. If you encounter one of those in the wild, you're losing an arm at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I played in a campaign once, and the GM knew that how much I loved owlbears, and so he dropped an owlbear on us as an encounter. But it was a flying owlbear, and it ripped my arm off. It actually ripped my character's arm off, and it was so traumatizing because I was like, oh, an owlbear, and then it was like, and like my arm's gone, and I'm like, ah. So they're terrifying. They really are.
Yeah, they get like, how many attacks they get? They get 3. They get like, so they just deal out damage, and they're so savage. So yeah, they
really are.
So before we say thank you to Matt for coming on today and talking to us, we know it's been a bit of a shorter episode, but we've got other things that we need to do. Like, Matt's been very kind to lend us some time. He's got things he needs to do. So we'd just like to say thank you very much for listening. If you wish to submit a question to the Deck of Many Questions, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, on YouTube here. Even bother our friends about us. So the Flickering Torch. maybe not Potomac so much. But bother our friends, let them know that you want to see them on our channel again or for the first time, and we'll bring them on and we will let everything play out and hopefully have a great time whilst doing it. So Matt, I have managed to curb my excitement, tell you how much I want to run a stream of Mecha Hack. I'll come back to you for some assets and some ideas of how I should do this, and I hope that we can keep this great relationship going in the future.
Absolutely.
But I would just like you to have this platform now to maybe plug whatever you want, say whatever you want. Just this is your moment now. You get to plug whatever you want, and we will hopefully get it out there to people.
Okay, great. Yeah. So first off, just thank you guys for having me on. This has been great. Really great chatting with you. And I'd love to come back on sometime and talk about the next thing. Maybe when Harbinger is happening, I can come on and talk about that. But
I'll let Leon lead on that one.
Yeah. But yeah, the Mecha Hack Mission Manual Kickstarter, it's going for actually 36 more hours right now as of this recording. So if you're able to get to it and pledge, that's great. If you missed out on the Kickstarter, though, we are going to be putting the pledge manager up in January, and we're going to be accepting late pledges. So don't fret too much if you missed out on the Kickstarter. You'll be able to nab your books in the early new year as well. So that'll be good. Just check out AbsoluteTabletop.com for some of our other products. We also have all of our products on DriveThruRPG as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at MattClick, MattClick, and I'm fairly active on there and do a lot of Mecca shit posting and all that kind of stuff. So definitely check me out. So.
Unfortunately, the Craig bot that we used to record this episode decided to cut off the last 15 seconds of the episode. So instead of Adderson saying goodbye to you, it's going to be Leon saying goodbye to you. So, as Adderson says, wherever you are, whenever you are, peace.